OAM, I think it's more likely, oh my God, he's back again. So I have to do this in a bit of a different way because most of you, or probably not most of you, didn't know I actually arrived here in sometime in '68, and most of you weren't even born by then. So I'm going to do this in a couple of pictures so you get an idea of how we got to where we got. And the picture you see there is why I came to Gove, is to get away from my siblings. That was the first thing I did. And my family was almost like an exploration, if you like, gypsies. We travelled all over Australia. I went to 32 schools and I decided, okay, bye-bye, I'm out. And I got this job I got notified that there was a job going in a place called Arnhem Land. I just took it and went. I think from the beginning, you've got to understand it was a pioneering job. It was a job that we didn't go in thinking we're miners. We went in there exploration to find out what was there. And a lot of us were young, multicultural. I think there was about 4 Australians and about 32 other countries that worked for me, worked in that area. So I've got a nod every time I want something done here. They don't trust me with a clicker. So that was my arrival at the airport. It wasn't 67, it was a year after that, but same airport, multinational. And when I arrived, you get off a plane. It was a DC-3. I don't know if you know DC-3, it sits like that. And I climbed off and I met a guy called Alex Somm. Alex Somm was the chief geologist. And he said, what do you know about bauxite? And I said, nothing. So he handed me a bit of bauxite and he said, that's what we're looking for. And I said, well, what does it do? And he said, turn around. And he said, that's what you flew in. And that's how I understood what aluminium was used for, or bauxite. Carrying on to that, we went to our camp. I've got to put my, there we go. Now that was a luxury camp. It had no fans and no air conditioning, and there were 3 people to a unit. I actually slept in a tent for the first 5 years because I didn't like that. And no, that isn't me in the rubbish bin looking for extra food. I actually don't know what he was there for. But before we go on, I want to explain something. We were isolated, very isolated where we were. It was called an ELDO camp. But what most people don't know is where you're sitting now, exactly this spot. And that's what you were sitting on. That's ELDO. This place didn't have a tree on it, completely flat. ELDO tracking station used to watch and track rockets coming from Woomera. Why ELDO, European Launching Development Operation, were testing the launching pads from Woomera rocket range, which shot up the Gulf. So we actually didn't even know that existed as the first couple of years, but up here there were French, there were Dutch, there were English, not many Australians, but good French cooks, and learned that very quickly, better than their canteen. So that gives you an idea of how wild this place was in some stage. We did not know that was really up there, and we were not allowed to go there anyway, so that helped. How we got around the place, put my hand up again, there we go. Road to Gove, 4 days if we are lucky, and that's from Catherine. And it hasn't changed much since. No, that's not true. No, it was just a wild time. We had to do things together. We were a tightly knit group. And I think that's probably made us the pioneers that we were at the time. It was rough and it was hard. But we didn't think like entrepreneurs or a big mining company. We were a family, right? And we just did what we had to do. I found stupid doing this. Not all things went right. I became a bit of a powder monkey after drilling, and I misjudged a few things. I was forgiven because there was no one in the truck, but we did lose one of our haulers. Again, why this picture is because we had to actually make a quarry to build the plant, to build the town, to build the road. We didn't have a quarry, so we had to start off with nothing. and we blew a hole, which was an old army quarry that we found on Drimmy Head, which is now called Gulkula, and we actually rebuilt the causeway so we could get the trucks to cross. Again, it's this pioneering thing. Things happened. We weren't all the best. I guess I'll just keep doing that. There you go. Now, I'm the one on the left, as you can see. No, not really. I'm the one in the centre. That was my drilling crew, all right? And I'm really proud to say that I had an Indigenous drilling crew, right? And they all worked damn hard. And later on, most of those guys went over to YBE under Keith Lana once we stopped drilling our way. Unfortunately, there aren't many left. Young Stephen is the last one, which is on the right-hand side bottom. But a good mob of guys. At that same time, Jawa was a bit younger than I, Jawa Yunupinga. He came on with us, and I worked with him for many years, same as his brother, or past brother. Next. That, believe it or not, was the plant when we first started developing it. That's before we developed and actually built the production plant of alumina on there. Not much to see. It was a nice plot. We didn't even realise what we were doing at the time. We were just building a foundation work. And that was the foundation work. When I finished exploration work, we were multitask. If you look very closely, you'll see a bulldozer down in the middle of it. Next to that, you'll see a diamond drill. That's me on the rig. We drilled all night and we blasted all day just to get some foundation work in. When I looked at it now, it sort of brings back memories to think, well, where are we going now? But I'll just do a little bit more history and then I'll catch on to that. So it may look like much, but that's Hans Werner and Long John Silver and a couple of the boys, and we're doing a little bit of foundation work. And you would think, oh, well, that's pretty good. In the middle of nowhere, that's actually Wallaby Beach. But let me show you what we did by hand so you get an idea. That is what we built, a 2,000-man camp. And we did that, all the cement work, all by hand, to build that up so that we could get a construction crew in. Again, we worked as a team. We worked as one. Yungal and Napaka together, all the time. We never missed that. They were always there. I'll just keep rolling. How was our transport? Totally legal at the time. There were some better ones than that, but I thought I'd show you the best of the buses, all right? So building the township. So, literally, this was a much later photograph. We did the road work around the town, and that was the school being built. And very much dear to my heart on Nhulunbuy, because remember, we did that from scratch, right? Zero. Cut a road in, plan it out, put some pegs in. My favourite was the nurses' quarters. Never happened, but it was there. And he's jumping the gun because I put my hand up. All right, now you can do it. Bank of New South Wales, our first bank. Why? I think they were shareholders in the company. That's why they got in quick. I think the New South Wales, it's called Westpac now. That was our lifeblood. We actually got paid in real dollars, and as in pound, as in dollars, not IT stuff. First ship, first cargo. Again, we didn't have a wharf. We had to build the wharf, right? And that was the stuff we dragged off to actually start making things. The next one, before I go over to it, you've got to understand things are a bit, what you might call, we had to be initiative. You can flick over. That's our first load of bauxite going out. Now, it wasn't a massive ship loader. It was my old truck, using the hammers to smash the bauxite up and then loading it by a makeshift conveyor line. Again, totally safety gear, as you can see, shorts, helmet. That's what we had. But we enjoyed it. It was tough. As you can see, the timber decking, all that was made at the time to get it on. You can go on. Opening. Now, this was really, I think it was the 1st of July, 71. The one thing about this, and not many people really pick up on this, is I think Billy McMahon opened it, and I did like his wife because she was a model. But if you have a look closely, who's got the biggest flag there? Swiss Aluminium. So a lot of people don't know that they were heavily involved in the Balco, right? In fact, they were the first company who I actually worked for. Most of the crew that we had came from Sierra Leone, from their mine directly. But they ended up, the Swiss got involved, they had to get 51%, they got shareholders, and away we went. Plant site, okay, so that was in full production at the time. We're talking about 3 million tonne a year, up to 4 million tonne of alumina. So we made the bauxite, alumina was made, and then shipped out, but we also shipped out some bauxite at the same time. I won't go too much into that. There are far more experts than I in that. I will say one thing, out of all the years I worked for the companies, and it was a long time, I actually never walked through the gates into that place. I didn't like factories, and they had things like caustic. Next, some things weren't that as good. As you can see on the front, that isn't a swimming pool. That's red mud and caustic. Right? There were decisions made at the time. Why? Because they could be made. There's nothing stopping those being made. They were wrong, yes, but they were still made. Okay? Wasn't pretty, considering now YB has got an office on it. But leaving that alone. Okay, my proudest day. Why my proudest day? We jumped now many years. Gallery said to me, I don't agree with mining, but if we had our own mine, we would do it. So we developed our own mine, and we developed Gumatj Corporation, or Gulkula mine. From that day on, the Indigenous people were always into mining. We're always into looking at prosperity through mining or through other methods. But I always remember he cried on that day. He said, I was never against. He said, but now it's mine. Now I made the decision and not someone else. Right or wrong, we started mining, and we are still mining to this day. Although I must admit we're coming to our end, as all resources come to our end of bauxite. And now, for the next phase, I need some water here, I'm driving, hang on. And I'm being watched by someone over here on a clock, I know, so bear with me. This is going to upset a few people, so bear with me, all right? Thanks, we're in what they call closure mode now. When I say closure mode, we haven't got too long to go before the Rio Tinto mine closes, before Gulkula closes, and before it will start to affect the town, affect the income, affect the people, and more importantly, affect the services. And that's why I'm going to do this little bit in a more comical stage so nobody cries for us. So I always said that we were a bit ignorant of the impacts, because impacts are inevitable when it does happen. However, there were some survivors out of this when we brought it up. We managed to talk and get communities together, and also get governments together to say, listen, we've got to work our way through this. This is going to be such an impact on the communities that even I was really worried about it, and I thought I was smart enough not to be. So not all of it worked. Not all the negotiations worked at first, and we had a lot of failures in that. We had a lot of failures because we actually didn't know what we were doing at the beginning. We were running around trying to work out how are we going to do this, how are we going to manage to do all this, and we just didn't know. But there were some successes. And I wrote GCL there because that's Gumatj Corporation and Red Chingu. Why? They're the landowners of the mine and the landowners of the town, and they are directly involved and will be directly affected. Not only through jobs and everything else, but through royalties. But we were starting to see some success. as in the meetings, the government being involved, us being involved, we started looking for ways how to do this. Unfortunately, there were so many organisations we had to deal with that were coming down in what I call a funnel. And the funnel was causing myself a lot of problems, thinking all these decisions have to be made in such a short time, we're going to make some big mistakes. We're going to be forced into making decisions that really are not good because we don't have enough planning time. We don't have enough input by and I keep saying governments, and I apologise for that. It's all governments, it's all mining, and it's all traditional owners. We all have a part in that. But we're all falling into that same funnel. And I really, at the end, go to the next one, don't know what's coming out. And if you look at the dates, 29 is not a long way away, people. And we still don't know how that we're going to work it. So you're talking a town of 4,000 people, 1,000 at Gulkula, 350 at Gulkula. What are we going to do? How are we going to run it? How are we going to keep hospitals and police and ambulance and everything else? Because we've had it for 50 years. But it costs a lot of money to run. I don't blame Rio, I don't blame the government. It is what it is, but we've still got to come up with a solution. Now, there is some ways, we have sometimes, I have nightmares, sometimes dreams. One of them is that, are we in dream time by asking the federal government to fly over the paddock with a sword and sabre and say, we'll save you? I don't think so. I hope so, but I don't think so. So we're just saying, look, who do we look to? And I guess I'm running through this a bit quick, but you've got to understand there has to be champions for us to get through this. But I'm not sure it's going to be the Commonwealth. It has to be all of us. And if you look at some of the badges behind the shadows, and we call them shadows because not many times they're up front, is that if we don't have all aligned, including the traditional owners, it will undoubtedly fail. Because at the end, they'll have no choice. They will walk away either too costly, it cannot be left away because there's too much liability. So who's going to be left? The TOs. So it's up to us to start leading that meetings, leading the combined effort of everyone, saying we must make this work and the timing is critical now. It's not something we can mess around with. It's all right to say, oh, we'll keep Rio here another 50 years. Well, there's no ore. It runs out. There's no money. And they've got shareholders like all of us. Even I've got shareholders, only they're called my board. The point is we've got to make it work, otherwise we will fail miserably for the region. Not just for us, for the region, because this has always been a hub for the region. It's had everything here and we've really got to clean it up. So my last slide, we need to take a new path. So I don't know about you people, but I did a real study on this, and there aren't many success stories when big lines leave. In fact, I only found one, and I think it was in Nubia in Africa somewhere. That was it. What happens is, economically, the money goes, it drops down to nothing, and you've got to start from zero again. I'm hoping, really hoping we don't get that way. But as you see by the right-hand croc, the little mouse is eating, or is that your rat? We failed if we don't do this. And I mean we failed not just for Gumatj Corporation or Rio Tingo operation, we failed for the region, but we also failed in another way. We failed by not having an example that we can do this elsewhere and succeed. We have a choice now and we can do it, but we need everyone's help. No individual, everyone's. I know Matty says no talk, let's move. Matty, I totally, is he gone? Oh, he's gone already, damn. Okay, less talk, more action, and that's what we're needing. If we don't get that, within 3 years, 4 years, you will see that town start to die. You may even see a shorter runway because we're not going to have jets. You won't be parachuting in, I admit, but it'll be a short runway. ports will start to close, hospitals will start to reduce, and that is what we've got to stop, because that's for the people. But do not expect RIA to do it, federal government to do it. We're all got to do this, otherwise it will fail. It's a lot of us. Anyway, I'll talk too much. Thank you.